The Council's Judgment. The chamber was older than most civilizations. Its walls were carved from a single piece of dark stone that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Here, in the heart of the Galactic Council's ancient seat, representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered beneath a dome that showed the living galaxy itself. Stars spinning in their eternal dance, nebulae breathing color into the void. But today, something was wrong. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone on the speaker's platform, a small figure beneath that vast cosmic display. Above her, whole sections of the galaxy map were going dark. Not the natural darkness of space, but an absence, a wrongness that made even the eldest council members shift uneasily in their seats. The Terran delegation will remain silent, pronounced High Arbiter Ven, his crystalline form refracting the dying starlight into rainbow fragments. This matter concerns species of consequence. Your presence here is merely procedural. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Around the circular chamber, the galaxy's most powerful species regarded her with barely concealed contempt. The Krell, who had mastered faster-than-light travel, when Earth's ancestors still lived in caves. The Sostari Collective, whose neural networks spanned a dozen star systems. The Voth Empire, conquerors of 100 worlds and humanity, they called Earth the Young World, a curiosity, a species that had barely left its own solar system, before stumbling into a galaxy already ancient and organized. The stellar decay spreads faster each cycle, reported Science Minister Thal, his tentacles gesturing toward the darkening map. 47 stars have entered premature collapse in the past rotation alone. The cause remains unknown. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Unknown. In a galaxy where every mystery had been solved millennia ago, where science was considered complete and perfected, this single word carried the weight of impossible fear. The pattern suggests a cascade effect, continued Thal, his voice carefully controlled. If it continues, we estimate 30% of all stars in the inhabited sectors will die within 200 cycles. Silence fell across the chamber, the kind of silence that comes before world's end. We propose immediate relocation of all species in affected zones, declared Arbiter Ven. Priority will be given to elder species with established colonial infrastructure, lesser civilizations. His gaze flickered briefly toward Sarah. Will be accommodated as resources permit. You're abandoning entire systems, Sarah said quietly. The chamber erupted. A dozen species began shouting at once, their translators creating a cacophony of outrage. How dare this human, this child species barely 3 centuries into space travel, interrupt a council proceeding? Ven's crystalline hand struck the council table, producing a sound like shattering ice. The Terran delegate was not recognized to speak. Neither was humanity recognized when we saved the Krell colony at Epsilon Eridani, Sarah replied, her voice steady now, carrying across the chamber. Or when we shared our agricultural techniques that ended the famine on Sostari Prime. Or when our doctors developed the cure for the Voth genetic plague. Irrelevant. Anecdotes, snapped Ambassador Kresh of the Krell, his scaled face twisted in disdain. You mistake charity for capability. We permitted your minor contributions because they amused us, nothing more. Sarah reached into her jacket and withdrew a small, crystalline data core. It caught the dying starlight, seeming to hold entire galaxies within its facets. Before you relocate Earth, she said, there's something you need to know. We need nothing from you, Ven declared, but his eyes, all 7 of them, fixed on the data core with something that might have been curiosity. Or hunger. Sarah activated the core. The chamber's display changed. The galaxy map faded, replaced by images of a moon, Titan, Saturn's largest satellite, its atmosphere a hazy orange shroud above methane lakes. 300 years ago, when humanity first reached Titan, we discovered something beneath the ice. Her voice was soft now, almost reverent. We thought they were geological formations at first. Massive structures buried 2 kilometers down, preserved in the frozen crust for we don't know how long. The images shifted, showing vast mechanical constructs of impossible complexity, cylindrical chambers the size of cities, conduits that seemed to fold space within themselves. At the center of it all, a sphere of unknown metal, its surface covered in symbols that hurt to look at. We've spent 3 centuries studying them, Sarah continued, learning their language, understanding their purpose. She paused, letting the weight of her next words build. They're forges. Star forges. Machines designed to create stellar bodies from raw matter and energy. The chamber exploded into chaos. Impossible, they shouted. Fabrication. Desperate lies from a desperate species. But Sarah wasn't finished. The forges have a designation system, a maker's mark, if you will. She zoomed in on one of the symbols. A simple circle with radiating lines, primitive yet unmistakable. This symbol appears on every component, every control surface, every power conduit. She looked up at the council, at the species who had dismissed her people as children playing at civilization. It's the same symbol carved into caves on Earth, 40,000 years ago. The same symbol painted on the walls of our oldest temples. The same symbol that appears in the myths of every human culture on every continent, since before recorded history. The silence now was different, heavier, charged with something between wonder and terror. The forges were built by humans, Sarah said simply, by our ancestors. From an age before this galaxy remembers our name, Arbiter Ven's crystalline form had gone completely still. That's impossible. Your species is barely 3 centuries into space travel? Sarah smiled, but there was no humor in it. That's how long we've been back, Arbiter. How long we've been remembering who we used to be. She pressed another control. New images appeared. Schematics, power readings, mathematical proofs that made even Thal's tentacles curl in shock. We know why the stars are dying, Sarah continued. And we know how to fix them. Because we built them in the first place. The display shifted one final time, showing a forge installation being assembled in the asteroid belt near Mars. Human ships, crude by council standards, barely worthy of notice, swarmed around it like insects building a hive. In 72 hours, we're going to reignite a dying star in Sector 7, Sarah announced. You're welcome to watch. Or you can continue relocating your populations, running from a crisis we're about to solve. She deactivated the data core and placed it gently on the speaker's platform. Humanity didn't come to this council for permission, she said quietly. We came to offer you hope. The choice of whether to accept it? Well, that's up to you. Sarah turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Behind her, the galaxy's most powerful species sat frozen, unable to comprehend what they'd just learned. The children they'd dismissed had once been gods. And now, as the stars fell dark, those gods were waking up. The Forge of Suns. The observation deck of the Council's flagship Eternal Witness had never been so crowded. Representatives from every major species pressed against the reinforced viewing ports, their various forms of eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. Some came out of curiosity. Others came to witness humanity's failure. A few, the wisest among them, came because they understood that everything was about to change. Sarah stood apart from the crowd, her hands clasped behind her back, watching the distant glimmer of dying light. Star HD 127 had been a yellow dwarf once, bright and warm, sustaining 3 colonies across 2 inhabited worlds. Now it flickered like a candle in the wind, its fusion core collapsing inward, consuming itself in a slow death that would leave millions homeless. 72 hours had passed since her revelation to the Council. 72 hours of heated debate, angry accusations, and desperate calculations by scientists who couldn't accept what their instruments were telling them. The forges were real. The technology was beyond anything the galaxy possessed. And humanity held the keys to stellar creation. They still think you're lying, said a voice beside her. Sarah glanced over at Dr. James Okonkwo, Earth's chief engineer, his dark face illuminated by the glow of a dozen holographic displays floating around his wrist. Let them think what they want, she replied. In 17 minutes, thinking won't matter anymore. On the tactical display, she could see the Forge, a massive construct assembled in orbit around HD 127's largest gas giant. It looked nothing like the elegant ships of the Council species, all flowing curves and aesthetic perfection. The human Forge was brutal in its functionality, angular, industrial, covered in cooling vanes and power conduits that glowed with barely contained energy. Forge command, "This is Witness," came the transmission officer's voice across the observation deck. You are cleared for activation sequence. All observation vessels have reached minimum safe distance. Sarah's communicator crackled. Copy that, Witness. This is Captain Rodriguez aboard Prometheus, beginning activation in T-minus 15 minutes. For the record, there was a pause heavy with meaning. It's been an honor serving with you all. Let's remind the galaxy what humanity can do. Around the observation deck, the assembled species muttered among themselves. The Krell ambassador's scales rippled with barely suppressed contempt. 15 minutes, he hissed. 15 minutes until their elaborate deception collapses. No species can create a star. It violates every principle of— Of what? Interrupted Thal, the Sustari science minister. His tentacles were moving in patterns that indicated deep uncertainty. Of physics as we understand it. Our understanding has proven incomplete. He gestured at his own displays covered in equations that spiraled into impossible complexity. The mathematics they've shared, I've had my best minds working through them. They're consistent, horrifyingly so. Mathematics can be fabricated, sneered Ambassador Kresh. Not like this, Thal whispered. These equations describe stellar mechanics at quantum levels we've never even theorized. They don't just predict fusion, they show how to command it. On the display, the forge began to move. Massive engines flared to life, pushing the construct toward the dying star. It was a slow dance, deliberate and careful, like a surgeon approaching a patient's heart. T-minus 10 minutes, announced Captain Rodriguez. Initiating primary power sequence. All forge sections report green status. Reactor cores are stable. Gentlemen, ladies, and variations thereof, we are go for stellar ignition. Sarah felt her heart hammering against her ribs. 300 years of research. Generations of scientists and engineers, working in secret beneath Titan's frozen surface. Learning to read the language of their ancestors. Decoding instructions left by a civilization that had reshaped the cosmos itself, before vanishing into the mists of forgotten time. And now, in minutes they would prove that humanity's ancient heritage was real, or they would fail, and condemn their species to eternal mockery. Why hide it? Asked a soft voice. Sarah turned to find Arbiter Venn standing behind her, his crystalline form refracting the starlight into scattered rainbows. If your people truly possess this knowledge, why conceal it for centuries? Sarah met his seven-eyed gaze. Because we weren't ready. The forges aren't just technology, Arbiter. They're power. The kind of power that built civilizations and destroyed them. Our ancestors knew that. They left us the tools but not the weapons. We had to earn the understanding, piece by piece, generation by generation. We had to prove we could be trusted with the fire we once wielded. And you believe you've earned that trust? We're about to find out. T-minus 5 minutes. Rodriguez's voice was steady, professional, but Sarah could hear the tremor beneath it. Forge positioning complete. Beginning deep stellar penetration, extending primary probes into the star's core. The displays showed long, needle-like structures extending from the forge, piercing through the star's convective zone like acupuncture needles into living flesh. Each probe was a masterwork of engineering, capable of surviving temperatures that would vaporize ordinary matter, protected by fields that twisted space itself. Probes have reached the fusion boundary, reported the technical officer. Core temperature reading, 2 million degrees and falling. Helium ash accumulation at 73%. Stellar collapse is accelerating. The dying star flickered on the screens, a wounded giant breathing its last. T-minus 2 minutes. Charging the forge core. Power levels rising, 20%, 40%, 60%. Rodriguez paused. We're at 100%. All systems nominal. Standing by for ignition command. Around the observation deck, the assembled species had gone silent. Even the skeptics leaned forward, unable to look away. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of Earth, of the caves where ancient humans had painted suns on stone walls, of the myths that spoke of firebringers and light-givers, of the long chain of humanity stretching back through time to an age when her people had walked among the stars as gods. Forge command, she said softly into her communicator. You are authorized to proceed. Light it up. Copy that, Ambassador. Beginning stellar ignition sequence. Injecting catalyst matrix into stellar core. Activating quantum resonance fields. Initiating fusion cascade in 3, 2, 1. Mark. For a heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then the universe caught fire. The forge sang. A vibration that transcended sound, resonating through the fabric of space itself. The probes embedded in the star's core pulsed with energy beyond measure, pumping exotic matter directly into the failing fusion reaction. On the displays, Sarah watched as the star's interior lit up like a Christmas tree, fusion chains igniting in cascading waves of nuclear fire. "Core temperature rising," shouted the technical officer, abandoning all pretense of calm. 4 million degrees, 6 million, 8 million. The fusion reaction is stabilizing. We're seeing proton-proton chain reactions throughout the entire core structure. The dying star screamed back to life. Light exploded outward from its surface, a shockwave of renewed stellar wind that sent nearby debris tumbling. The flickering, fading yellow dwarf blazed bright and fierce, burning with the fury of youth restored. On the thermal displays, Sarah watched as the core temperature spiked and then settled into a steady, healthy rhythm. The heartbeat of a reborn sun. Stellar ignition successful. Rodriguez's voice cracked with emotion. HD-127 is stable. Repeat, star is stable and burning at optimal parameters. The forge is withdrawing probes. All systems functioning normally. We did it. We actually did it. The observation deck erupted into chaos. Some species cheered, caught up in the impossible triumph they'd just witnessed. Others stood frozen, their minds struggling to accept what their eyes had shown them. The Krell ambassador stumbled backward, his scales turning pale. Thal's tentacles writhed in patterns that indicated both joy and existential terror. Sarah allowed herself a smile, a small one. "Arbiter," she said, turning to Ven, "humanity would like to make a proposal. We have 43 forge installations in various stages of construction. We can have them deployed across the affected sectors within 6 cycles. We can save your stars, all of them." Ven's crystalline form seemed to dim and brighten rapidly, his species equivalent of rapid breathing. "What? What do you want in return?" "Recognition," Sarah said simply. "A seat at the council as equals, not charity cases. Access to the archives your species have kept sealed for millennia. And..." She paused. "Answers. We know our ancestors built the forges, but we don't know why they stopped. We don't know what happened to the civilization that once made us gods. Those answers are buried somewhere in this galaxy's history, and we intend to find them. You're demanding..." "We're not demanding anything," Sarah interrupted gently. "We're offering salvation and asking for partnership in return. You can refuse, of course. Continue trying to evacuate entire stellar populations while your stars die. Or..." She gestured at the reborn sun burning brightly on the displays. "You can accept that the children you dismissed have grown up, and that they remember who they used to be." Arbiter Ven was silent for a long moment. Around him, the other council members watched, waiting for his decision. Finally, his crystalline form seemed to solidify, taking on a posture that suggested both respect and resignation. "The council will convene an emergency session," he said formally. "I cannot speak for all species, but I believe the vote will be in humanity's favor." His 7 eyes fixed on Sarah with something that might have been wonder. "Welcome to the council, Ambassador Chen. As equals." Sarah nodded, then turned back to the view screen. Out there, across the dying galaxy, 46 more stars waited for rescue. 46 more chances to prove that humanity's ancient legacy wasn't just real, it was needed. "Forge Command, this is Ambassador Chen," she said into her communicator. "Begin deployment of all remaining Forge units. Let's bring the light back to every corner of the galaxy." "Copy that, Ambassador. Dispatching Forges now. It's going to be a long few cycles," Sarah smiled. "The best work always is." Behind her, the observation deck had descended into frantic activity. Scientists demanding data, politicians demanding meetings, military commanders demanding strategic assessments. The galaxy was waking up to a new reality, one where humanity stood not as children learning from their elders, but as ancient masters reclaiming their inheritance. Dr. Okonkwo stepped up beside her, watching the reborn star burn bright against the darkness. "You know what this means, don't you?" he said quietly. "Once we save their stars, they'll want to know everything. They'll want access to the forges, to the technology, to the knowledge." "I know," Sarah replied. "And if they learn how to build stars," he let the implication hang, "they'll also learn how to destroy them." "Yes, I know that too." Sarah's expression was thoughtful, touched with sadness. "Our ancestors must have faced the same choice. Give the galaxy fire or keep it locked away. They chose to hide it, to wait until humanity was ready to bear that burden again. And you think we're ready?" Sarah looked at the burning star. At the colonies below that would survive because humans had remembered how to command fusion itself. She thought of the long road ahead, the stars to save, the mysteries to uncover, the ancient questions that still had no answers. No, she admitted, but I don't think anyone ever is. We just have to be wise enough to try anyway. The galaxy turned beneath them, vast and ancient and full of dying lights. But now, for the first time in eons, hope had returned. The forge builders were awake, and they were bringing back the suns. The end.